This is the Sourced Podcast, where cold mornings, screaming bull elk, and bent rods turn into legends told. Hosted by Nate Zelinsky and brought to you by Jiffy Ice Fishing. We go beyond tags and trophies, into the grind, the heartbreak, and the moments that keep us coming back for more. If it bugles, if it bites, if it lives wild, it's Sourced. Lock in.
Welcome to the Source Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Zelinsky, guys. Thank you for being here. Again, the Source Podcast officially brought to you by Jiffy Ice Fishing. We're super excited about that. Again, all the things that Jiffy's doing. Today, we have got an awesome guest, somebody who's literally done it all, Mr. Tommy Kemos. How you doing, Tommy?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. I'll tell you what, when you talk about like legends of the industry, you're just that guy, man. You've done it all. You've been a part of it. Just again, I think for everybody in the world, myself included, man, I think your widespread connection to fishing is something that if people don't know you, they need to know you because the word you have to say is incredible, man. So I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Oh, you're making me blush. But I appreciate you reaching out. And as you know, there's nothing that I love more than fishing. But when it's cold out like this, it's always great to be talking about fishing as well. But I've been at it for quite a while. The grays in my beard reflected, and I've been real fortunate along the way to not only have some pretty amazing accomplishments, but just some of the projects that I've been fortunate enough to work on as well has been an important part of my career. So
I mean that's it, man. So I was just talking to my producer Chris behind the scenes here. So when we get set up for the shows, right, I'm buddies with most of the guests that come on. So I have a personal relationship with almost everybody, but like we joke around, I don't necessarily know the careers of everybody that I have on because I know them as a buddy, right? You and I, we talk more as friends and bump into each other's shows more than we talk industry. So I always, my good old friend ChatGPT, I'm like, hey, talk about Tommy Kemos. Dude, it's like 9 pages long of the things that you've been a part of. I mean, from championships to Angler of the Years to development to product to TV show, right? The list goes on, and whether you want to admit it or not admit it, you've done more than most people, which I love to hear. The biggest thing that I want to talk about, just to highlight you before we kind of start talking about messages here, is you fish all season. There's so many anglers that we talk to that are, open water anglers. That's who most of us are. But very few, and you're like, hey, I want to talk ice fishing. They're like, ooh, no, I don't do that, right? And obviously it's sponsored by an ice fish company, so we love that. But, your ice and also your multi-species. And I think that's the biggest thing because that's what built my career, right? I've been a tournament walleye angler. That's my species of choice. But at the end of the day, my concept to multi-species is what made me a better walleye angler. It made me a better bass angler. When you have to catch all the fish, all of a sudden you see this major crossover of techniques and gear, and it opens your eyes to so many new opportunities, and that's where you have really shined of doing it all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of guys, once the season's over, they're on to hunting, and over the years I've put hunting in the fall more and more on the back burner because the fall fishing is so great.
Yep.
It is, you're looking at some of the healthiest fish of the season. They're hungry, but more importantly, it's a time that I can go out and spend more time tinkering around and kind of honing certain skills or for bait development. A lot of that happens in the fall as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I like all the seasons for fishing. I love ice fishing as well. But as I get a little bit older, I'm turning more and more into I've got like it has to be above 20 to 25 degrees for me to hit the ice. Otherwise, I find something to tinker around with in the shop,
It's crazy how it always changes, just with age. I was joking with Kavaias about it, with Chase about it. We all talk about it because we all love the ice so much, but it's crazy how when you're in your 20s, it's go, go, go. Now you're like, all right, are we going to be inside fishing? Do we have the right gear? You think about the process just a little bit more. But all right, so I got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. First and foremost, the concept that I want to talk to you about, and I don't lead you in with these questions, so I haven't given you time to think about it, but I want to talk about the mental aspect of fishing, the confidence that goes into it, right? An angler that goes out and confidently approaches a bite tends to do so much better than an angler that talks himself out of this. Now, the reason for this is you were the biggest part of my career change with my mental fishing. I've never told you this. I don't want to pretend that I'm like a big fan. I don't want to get your head all big. You rewind to 2007, and you didn't even have a clue who I was. I guarantee you never even knew who I was. 2007, fishing an MWC tournament, right? This is early on in my tournament career for walleyes. We're on Green Bay, and I'm a nervous wreck. I had the talent to compete and catch fish, but when I was in a tournament setting, I would get so wound up, so in my head, chasing nets. I would abandon the golden ticket of a technique because I saw two other people catch a fish before me. I was a mental wreck, right? So I'm on Green Bay, I'm in my jersey, I'm professional, I got this, and I come over by a reef, and there you are. Your shirt's off, you're getting a tan, and you're wrecking fish in this MWC tournament so far away. There's no cameras around. You were just fishing. And I'm watching you, and I'm like, man, he's having fun. And I wasn't having fun. I was a stressed out mess. And I'm like, man, if I could just go fish and catch fish, I would do well. And it literally changed my entire tournament career and my entire career in general, because I was like, hey, even though there's a camera on, even though you're guiding, even though you're tournament fishing, if you can bring it back down to the roots and you can just go catch a fish, it becomes so much easier. And I think so many anglers, no matter if you are going out for the weekend, you're in a tournament or whatever, everybody gets in their heads. But if you go out and go with confidence, you catch fish. Walk me through that concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, you covered a couple different things that I've observed in anglers over the years as well. But the biggest thing is, you see it in rookies where they'll start getting a little spun out or whatever. It is just fishing. You're fishing against the fish. Number one, it's supposed to be fun.
Yep.
Some days you could argue that, but at the end of the day, like for me, the fun has always been trying to figure it out. Kind of try to stay ahead of the fish and. But in the tournament piece of it, you have to, number one, go out with a game plan, try to execute the game plan. But even in practice, you can't be racing all over the entire lake. You can't cover most of these bodies of water on your own. You have to go into every tournament with a plan.
Yep.
And that plan starts basically during your pre-fish. And the thing of it is that a lot of people don't look at an individual tournament as a business, but you kind of think about it through business perspective. Yep. You have to have a business plan. Very much so. You jump into it without having a clue what you're doing. So, a lot of times if you just formulate that plan, once practice starts, it helps you to relax a lot more because you have everything laid out already, kind of how you want to approach it, the water that you want to look at, maybe techniques that you want to, be specific with. But that being said, it doesn't always work out as planned. Yep. So you can't get spun out. You have to use, make a confident, educated decision on, okay, this isn't happening. You need to think about why it's not happening. Is it, are the fish behind water temperature wise or migration wise? And try to just back up. You either need to get back ahead of it or back up based on what you're seeing with water temperature. A lot of it has to do with just paying attention to the weather patterns and the water and being confident in what the fish would be doing during those conditions. Otherwise, you're like, you're in 2 feet of water, you're in 100 foot of water, you're all over the place, and so you need to kind of try to lock in, keep an open mind, but kind of lock in on a specific pattern that you're trying to uncover. So, but yeah, I mean, it's, again, like you're out fishing though at the end of the day, as much as the wheels are grinding, it's still, you have to remind yourself that it's you against the fish. And I think that's why I like to fish as much as I do, and I fish so much throughout the different seasons, is that I really enjoy making those adjustments and targeting those fish when they have different things in mind as far as their migration and whatnot goes.
No, and I think that's it. I think staying focused is a big part of that confidence level, just to be like, hey, I go out with a plan, I execute the plan. It's like that, right? If you go into any situation where you're like, hey, we're just going to go see what happens, and you're kind of, flying with the wind, it doesn't give you that confidence, that education, the plan. Like you said, putting together as a business plan, that's an awesome way to think about, like, hey, here's the objective, here's how we're going to achieve that objective, here's the steps that we take, and I think you follow through with that. It keeps you on track, and it takes away the loss of focus, which again kind of comes down to that confidence. So the second you don't have a plan, you lose the confidence, and again, if you don't have confidence, you lose it. I can't tell you how many times on a guide trip where I'll lose it, right? So I'll be fishing on a bite for weeks on end, and all of a sudden you lose the bite, right? Something changes, and other people are catching fish, and your clients are giving you the like, hey, what are they doing? There's times where I will literally be like, hey, we're taking a bathroom break, and they're like, we don't need to go. I'm like, we're going to shore. I'm like, go spend 15 minutes up there, right? Like, I'll organize my boat, I'll retie stuff. Like, I'll literally like just sit there and be like, okay, this is my factory reset, get back with the plan. And it's literally just that little get back with the plan, the business plan, get a plan and then execute, and all of a sudden that confidence back, and you go catch fish. But there's so much to it on that side of things that I think a lot of anglers don't know. And it starts with that little preparations, right? Before you go on the water. Well, again, whether it's an afternoon of fishing on your home body of water or a tournament, having a plan going into it's a big start of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we're looking at such large bodies of water, and when you're talking the reservoirs, we've got fluctuating water levels, Great Lakes, extreme temperature fluctuations. So you have to have all that, kind of in mind, and because you just can't cover all of it.
Yep.
So you have to try to stay on task. And I've been doing this a long time, and so sometimes though you can go into a place and you have a preconceived notion, and you also have to be just aware of and recognize like the signals that, hey, this I'm totally off base on what I thought was going to be going down here, and you can't be stubborn with it,
That's a huge factor, because we talk about calendar anglers, right? This is not the tournament guy. This is the guy that says, last year on June 5th, I was on this body of water and we wrecked fish. And they go out this year and like, hey, we're going to go pull a live bait rig because that's the thing. Or we're going to go pull spinners because that's the thing. And they don't have success, and they're wrecked because they went into it mindset that that's the thing. And I think that's it, recognizing quickly, right, that the fish aren't on the same calendar as us. Water temperatures, level, everything, bait fish, whatever. It all changes. So I think that's a big thing to keep in mind, that things change. Open-minded concepts are huge. It's a good place to start. Go out, check things. But if it's not happening, make sure you are able to change that plan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have buddies all the time that are like, I don't know what, I think there's something wrong with the fish population. Last year, we crushed them. We went up for 4 or 5 days up to Escanaba, and we crushed them, and we went back the same dates this year, and it was terrible. And I'm like, well, which way was it? Did you pay attention to the winds and which way they had been blowing prior to your trip? Well, not really. Well, that's another thing too, that I talk about a lot, is that, when you have a trip planned, it doesn't matter where it is. You don't have to wait till you're on the water to start trying to figure stuff out. Like if I'm talking about a Great Lake or a reservoir, I'll start watching that, that weather pattern. I'll my phone turn to the weather for, let's say I'm going out to Erie or Huron. Like I'll watch it for like 2 or 3 weeks leading up to that to kind of see, what the water temps are doing and what the weather is doing to try to get an idea on, are the fish going to be shallow? Is the water going to be, too cold for this bite or that bite? Same thing with the reservoirs. If they're running a ton of water, that water is, those reservoirs get iced out. So there's a lot better chance that the fish are going to squirt up into, the bays and the flats and the shallower stuff to get, so like just paying attention to those things before you take your trip. I'm speaking in terms of, the weekend angler here, but there's, if you put in a little bit more effort and a little bit more homework, you can put yourself ahead when you go out Saturday morning instead of hoping you figure it out by the end of the weekend.
I mean, that's it. And more importantly, years ago, I would say it was a little harder, right? We didn't have, our devices and this kind of stuff. Now, literally in a 5 minutes, you can watch the wind. Hey, here's the wind direction. Here's the speed. It's shifting water temperature, surface, yada, yada, this way. What's the water levels, right? Pull up the app on that body of water. You can pull up an app to see the water temperatures. Like, we used to have to call a bait shop. Hey, what's the water temperature out here? Hey, it's this. Okay, cool. Now, you spend 5 minutes on your phone on most places in the country, and you can get intel on the body of water you're fishing, and it doesn't take much time to just get a little bit of patterns where when you show up, the knowledge is there. So I think that's huge. Now, Tommy, we're 15, 20 minutes into the podcast. People are listening. They're digging the information. I got to highlight you, right? So again, we're talking, 2006 PWT champ. You've been Angler of the Year. You've probably competed and had titles of some kinds, wins, championships, whatever, from more circuits than almost all walleye anglers out there. And that's one of the coolest things is you've fished all the different series through the years, whether it's team events, whether it is pro-ams, individual tournaments. So I want people to realize that the word they're hearing, the gospel of Tommy, we'll call it, it's coming from a widespread, from TV to product development to tournaments. Out of all your accomplishments, so people understand who they're talking to, what are you most proud of in your career so far as we talk about the knowledge that you're giving us?
I would have to, like, if I put, for sure, winning that PWT championship, it was a single event. I won AOI in the NWT, I think it was in 2014. But that PWT championship was definitely, and still is, my proudest accomplishment in this sport, for a couple different reasons. I mean, number one, the sport was way different back then.
Way different.
I was very fortunate, and it has fueled me to be very involved in competitive angling, moving forward. But I was fortunate enough to get in this and get an opportunity to fish at the highest level, basically in the heyday of our sport, and I'm not trying to take what we're doing now down a level. It's just that it carried a lot more weight, and it was, it was something that I dreamed of doing when I started my, my pursuit of it. And, in 2002, I fished my first PWT tournament on Lake Erie. I worked my way up through the through the MWC and the team events, but that in 2002, I fished on my own, no team, just solo, and I made the PWT championship. It was 3 tournaments. Lake Erie was the first one. Lake Winnebago was the second one, and then the third one was Saginaw Bay. Winnebago was the only one that I'd ever fished before, so it was pretty cool to go out there, break those bodies of water down,
yeah.
do, have enough success to make the championship. I drove out to Bismarck. All I could think about all the way out there was like what it would be like to win it. I was so excited. I finished one place away from last place in that tournament at Bismarck. Everybody else went left. I went right, and I learned my first Missouri River lesson in that tournament. But I was fortunate enough to, in 2006, make it back there, and I won the tournament wire to wire. And it was the last day of the tournament. My rub rail was rubbing against Keith Kavaius's rub rail, who, was an idol of mine in the sport. Yep. He still is an idol of mine in the sport, and somebody that I've been very fortunate to get to call a good buddy, and spent a lot of good times with Keith. But in that situation, he didn't know me from Adam. I didn't know him, and we were grinding, vertical jigging, rail to rail. It was awesome. Yep. And it's still, like I say, like it's, as you can hear, I still get excited talking about it. Yep. I've knocked on the door several times in championships since then, but it's eluded me. And like, I can tell you, like, I am still super competitive, and I'm so overdue right now. It's like,
no, man, we're cheering for you. And I will just have to say that, I mean, the field of the PWT compared to where it is now, and again, we're not taking away from anybody because the anglers out there now are unbelievable. But the 2004, 2006 PWT guys, I mean, it literally is Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer. I mean, the elitists that were in those series to take a championship is truly the best of the best. So we love seeing that. And again, like you said, it's not that tournaments have changed, but I mean, back then it was just a different crowd in tournaments. So hats off to you and kudos to that. And that's what I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about who you were so everybody knows that where this knowledge is coming from. So as we proceed in this, while we get to pick your brain of somebody who's done so many things in so many different networks, what is a single piece of advice, whether it is walleye, Lakers, bass, whatever the case to be, right? Somebody's approaching the day on the water. What is something that's going through your brain, right? So again, whether you're shooting a TV show, whether you are in a tournament, right? When you approach a body of water, what is a single advice to help people catch more fish? Is it temperature? Is it technique? Is it boat control? Is it setup? Like, right? Walk me through a couple things going through your head that set you up for success when you're approaching the body of water.
Well, I think the number one thing, now more than ever, but the number one thing is paying attention to your electronics. When we talk about electronics now, everybody thinks the first thing they think of is live scope or forward-facing sonar, but there are a lot of other tools that can expedite the process of getting yourself in a position where you're going to get on the fish quickly. As soon as you get on that body of water, you're going to recognize what the water temperature is. I can't stress enough, just when you go out fishing, spend a little time just driving around looking. Look at your side imaging, pay attention to your 2D sonar. When you launch the boat and you start driving out, is there a thermocline set up? There's, in the summertime, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, is not paying attention to that thermocline, in which, a lot of times if you can just match up where that thermocline meets the structure, those are going to be key areas to focus in on. But specifically, like, I feel like anytime that you're heading to the lake to target whatever species it is, the number one thing is pay attention to the weather, the previous days, which way had the wind been blowing. On the reservoir, it's huge. A lot of times the fish, the wind blowing sides, even if the day that you fished, it's not blowing in there. If it had been blowing the last 3 days, that's where you're going to want to be. So it's, a lot of this stuff is a lot simpler than, we try to make it sound like it's some sort of witchcraft, but a lot, just paying attention to the data that you have available, and I don't like to make it sound like, it has to be this big investment of time. Again, like you were talking about with our devices, I can pull up my phone and go back and look at the last week, what the wind was doing every day. I can look at what the water levels were doing and even go online and see, like on the Great Lakes, you can see water temperature and see different pockets of water temperature. So like if I'm going to be, get a couple buddies together, load the family up, go to Green Bay for the weekend to try and catch walleyes, you don't want to just show up at Oconto in July and think you're going to go out and catch fish. If that wind had been, if it'd been blowing hard all week out of the west, there's not going to be a fish to be caught around there. You're going to drive around, you're not going to catch anything. So simply by just paying attention to that, in that scenario, okay, well, we're not going to launch on the west side of the bay. We're going to launch on the east side of the bay, and you're going to be into fish instead of being in water that the fish, they're iced out, they don't want to bite. So, again, that's kind of like my answer before, but it's just paying attention to those conditions is so huge.
Nope, I couldn't agree more. I think that's everything. And again, it just dictates where the fish are at. You can't catch fish that aren't there, and being on the fish is the biggest step to obviously catch them. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Now, with that said, technique-wise, right? Obviously, you fish all species, but you're a walleye guy at heart. If we're going to approach a body of water, let's just call it for walleye, but it could be for anything. What is Tommy Kemos' strongest technique? Is it trolling? Is it pitching a crank? Is it throwing a jig? What is your strongest avenue? If there's a tournament that you are going into saying, I can do this technique better than everybody else, what is your best technique?
Anything involving a jig, I would say, whether it's vertical jigging or pitching, I've got a ton of confidence, and the jig is so versatile, and there's anybody that's thinking about getting into walleye fishing, that is such a big part of the sport is jigging, whether it's vertical jigging in the spring and in the fall. I do a ton of it, even in the winter when we get warmer winters, but jig fishing, because it's just so versatile. You can deliver, anything from a live night crawler to, there's so many different choices of tails. I mean, you start thinking about like all the different presentations that you can do with a jig. It's definitely something you can cover a variety of different water, levels in the water column, fish at a bunch of different speeds, profiles. It's definitely jig fishing. Now with jig fishing, we have brand new anglers on here watching this, listening to it. One piece of advice for a jig, right? What do you got for people? Are we talking light line, short rod, long rod? What's a simple thing that you do? You and I are on the boat. What would you be doing differently as a spectator would watch us that would give you the advantage? What's one thing that a jig angler can do better of? Well, I think, if we're in terms of like vertical jigging, one mistake I see a lot of people make is just moving the bait too much.
Okay.
And thinking that you have to have it on the bottom, like in current, that you have to have your jig in contact with the bottom. I just want to know that bottom is there. So I'll occasionally, just check to make sure that I'm in the zone. In a vertical jigging situation in current, the faster the current, the closer the fish are going to be to the bottom. The slower the current, the more the fish will come up off the bottom and act more like lake fish. The other like number one thing in any jig presentation is watching your line. So I 100% use high vis line for every application that I use, whether it's scoping for fish, casting a bait at them, having the ability to, watch your line in conjunction with what the fish is doing. But just even like in the spring, fishing just broad flats.
Yep.
A lot of times you're going to see that bite, because they're biting on a slack line. A lot of times you're going to see that bite before you feel it. And in situations where you're fishing live bait, for example, being able to see that bite and recognize it before you pull into the fish, a lot of times, especially in the spring when the water's cold, that can be the difference between catching the fish and not catching it. So, in a case of like a full crawler, you don't want to put a lot of pressure on the fish because they can tear the crawler off before they eat it. So you want to be able to see what that fish is doing. And a lot of times when a fish grabs your jig, you're going to have the pressure there, but what you're going to see is when that fish actually eats it, and kills, they grab it, they kill it, then they eat it. And when they eat it, there's always that you're going to see that distinct jump in your line. And I think that's super important. So high vis line for sure.
But I couldn't agree more. I am all about the high vis line. It's funny how I talked to some younger anglers and I'm like, oh man, what's your line? They're like, dude, I got the best rod out there. It doesn't matter what brand, right? They're bragging about their greatest rod ever. They're like, I got this. I don't need to watch it. And I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you want to catch more fish, pretend that you are not good enough for anything and you need it all. You need to watch your rod tip. You want to watch your line. You want to feel. If you put every aspect of ability that we have as a human between watching, feeling, everything, even though you might look like a dork sitting there staring at your rod so intent, it will produce more fish at the end of the day. Because again, I might feel 70% of them, but at the end of the day, if that last 30% is the biggest fish or the fish that I've always been striving to catch, if I need to watch my line, if I need to watch my rod tip, all things will lead to more bites. And I think going into any bite, just knowing I'm going to do everything I can to increase my odds, at the end of the day, like you said, it'll definitely help produce more fish. And yeah, I mean, I have anglers, especially on guide trips, an angler that might not be as into it, they see a high vis line, a flame green fire line, they're like, dude, what is this? And I'm like, man, I wish it was brighter. I want to see everything.
Yeah, no doubt. And, from, your standpoint as far as guiding goes as well, you're going to lose a lot less tackle also if you're taking advantage of, if you're just, feeling bottom by dragging your jig along, you're going to stick a lot more than if you can see it crisply hitting bottom, keep semi-tight line and, make your next move, or you can get a lot more of a clean cadence as well if you're line watching versus, waiting to feel the bait. So,
nope, I agree 100% with that. Now,
I mean, that's in my opinion one of the biggest things as far as rods go. I am a huge fan of medium extra fast.
Okay.
When it comes to any sort of jigging, so that's as far as rod lengths, to each his own as far as what you're comfortable with, but yeah, I think that a medium extra fast rod really helps with all aspects of jigging as well.
I love that. On the rod length, it's funny because it's so mixed. When I talk to the general public, I tend to preach shorter rods, but that's simply for the fact that I think so many anglers overwork a bait. Especially on a guide trip. It's probably the guide in me that's talking about this. I give a client a 7-foot rod, and I'm like, hey man, we're just gonna hop this jig, make bottom contact, hop it up, 8 inches, and set it back down, just nick bottom, come back up again. And I watch them work the rod, and they're working at 3 foot, and I'm like, dude, that's way too much. Like, what do you mean? If I give them a 5'9" or a 6-foot rod, it forces them to slow their technique down, stay in the strike zone, and they catch a lot more fish. But yet, when I hold a rod, I'm instantly going to that 6'8", 7-foot, and they're like, hey, why do you get to use a long one? I'm like, man, because I know my zone. I can work a bait 3 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever the case may be. But it's so funny because on the educational side, I preach a shorter rod, but yet when I get one in my hand, I want the capabilities of the longer rod, hook set, cast, all the things that go with it, fighting fish and that. So there's so much to it, but again, it comes down to the individual angler's ability to have that control. So like you talking, watching the line and that, my biggest thing is if I had to talk to somebody about ways to increase your skill level, especially with the jig, is understand that zone that you're fishing. More so, understand what your bait is doing. Like you said, people think they have to make so much bottom contact, and in their head, it's like nicking bottom and it's beautiful, when in reality, it's digging and diving and, hitting everything out there. So I think the ability to maintain control of a technique in an area is a big one to catch more fish.
Yeah, no doubt. And in, two other little pieces about jigs, jumping around here a little bit, but like for vertical jigging, there's two different rules of thumb for jigging. One is when you're pitching, one is for vertical. For vertical jigging, a lot of people make the mistake of going too light. So vertical jigging is a presentation where you want to have 100% control over that jig. And a lot of times a heavier jig is going to fish better. You're going to have more control over it. But there's plenty of times also that extra bulk of the jig, I think, makes a big difference, especially in dirty water. Now, the flip side of that is in pitching. On the pitching side, I want to try to go as light as I feel like I can maintain control of the jig. So vertical, I'll go heavier. Pitching, I'll go lighter.
It's like we're at one talking about this. I'm even almost heavier on all sides. It's so funny though. I will get in arguments with other anglers, seminars, all this, right? Because if you have a widespread concept of asking people about weight of jigs, it's like the whole industry is telling people to go lighter, right? You read an article and everybody's like, man, you got to pitch that light jig so the fish don't feel it. You and I fish for a living, and you put us in a slight wind with an 1/8 jig, and we're great jig fishermen. We have control. We're in the industry, and yet you have no feel for what that's doing. And if you lose control of your presentation, you're not going to catch fish. And I think the general consumer is afraid of weight, right? They're afraid to throw extra weight on their presentation, whether it's casting or vertical. But I think anglers get scared of that when at the end of the day, control is going to help you catch fish. And if you need a heavier jig, whether that's heavier going from an 1/8 to a quarter, whether that's heavier from quarter to 3/8, or vice versa, all the way up, having control of a presentation, it helps you catch fish at the end of the day. And I don't think anglers should be scared of that weight.
No, not at all. It's just understanding when and where is the biggest thing. But again, it isn't super complicated, but I just see a lot of people, when I'm fishing, in Wisconsin here, the river thing, there's a lot of, we have a lot of traffic. So you're fishing amongst people. And I always just like to observe, the other people fishing around me, what they're catching, and just kind of watch what they're, they're doing and what they're using, and had kind of a funny situation. I filmed a show earlier this year on the Winnebago system, and matter of fact, it just aired not too long ago. But we were fishing there was 50 boats where we were fishing, and I wanted to do a jig dragging show, which is it's a pretty specific technique that a lot of people don't 100% understand. So I wanted to do something that was going to be a kind of an eye opener for people. But again, we had all this traffic. Well, we were absolutely wailing on them, and I was starting to feel bad because we were catching them like at such a pace, and then filming on top of it, all these people are watching us.
Clearly,
So
from your smile, you were feeling real bad. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, it was like, I'm a guy that will always, if somebody, says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'll show them 100%. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to be like broadcasting it around. I mean, that's what we do at the show, right?
Yep.
But when I'm out fishing, it was crazy because there was like 4 or 5 specific boats that actually, swallowed their pride and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And I showed them, but it was all about jig size, and it was all about the amount of the size of crawler that you had on. And so these people like immediately started making adjustments, and then the next thing you know, and I just what reminded me of that is I just bumped into one of the people at the ice show up here, and they were just still talking about what an awesome tip it was and how many fish they ended up catching that day. But again, it just boils down to using the right size jigs for the right application.
Yep. No, there's no doubt about it. All right, while we're talking product there, last thing I have for you today that I really want to talk about, you've been involved in a lot of different projects and things like that. Is there a particular product, right? Maybe a bait, a presentation. Is there something that you've been a part of that you're excited about? I would love to kind of touch on that. Has there been anything in the industry specifically that you're like, this was cool that I was a part of the innovations of?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in several different things. The shiver minnow, Keith and Gary and Chase and I kind of opened everybody's eyes up.
Open your eyes up?
Yeah. So that was very fun to be a part of. But specifically, I'm with Pure Fishing. So I've been fortunate enough to be a part of the development team at Berkeley for a few years now. And, obviously the Berkeley Finisher is a phenomenal new bait.
Yep.
That I had a little bit of feedback in, not a ton of it, but I fished it quite a bit. I think I might have caught the first fish in a tournament on a Berkeley Finisher out of anybody on the planet, which is pretty cool. But this past year, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to develop the Berkeley Roller and the Bladed Roller, which is a project that I've been trying to harness and get with the right group of people to be able to bring it to reality for quite some time. And that is, you're out west, so the value of the slow death technique. And there hasn't been what I wanted to do, what I set out to do at this was to be able to deliver the slow death technique in a castable form.
That's it.
So it was, a ton of time went into this thing. Last year, I easily spent over 100 hours on it. But I felt so strongly about it and just having the opportunity to make this thing happen was such a huge deal. But it's a technique that I have a ton of confidence on, the slow death technique. Its Achilles heel has always been when the fish are in water shallower than, like, say, 8 foot. Okay. There's some situations where in dirtier water they'll let you pull over them with a bottom bouncer, but not too many times will they let you do that before they start skating out of there. So in the Roller jig, that's a compact, castable, slow death delivery system, and it's not a full crawler bait. It's a slow, it's designed for that, deadly slow death technique. And then the Bladed Roller, you still have that, slow death technique, tantalizing slow death action or slow turn action, but with the added flash of a blade, which, nobody's doing it with an actual spinner blade, which, if we go out trolling in open water, we're going to have a spinner blade on.
Absolutely.
So that was that's a project that is very fresh. I'm super proud of it. The timing of the release on it is going to put it in a lot of anglers' hands to start the season off. This upcoming season once the conditions get right.
And I think that's going to be huge. Talking to Aaron and Chris there at Berkeley, they were talking about how big of the concept of the reality of here's the vision versus to what actually got produced, and you nailed it. And for everybody watching this, right, we're talking about the Rawler. I know you just listened to the last 5 minutes, but a lot of concepts here, right? One, delivering a slow death meat presentation in shallower water. You nailed it, and it's the best bait out there for that. Number two, with the advancements of forward-facing sonar, right, we never are taking a slow death presentation, or rarely, and casting it to suspended fish, right? We've always pulled slow death-ish style techniques on the bottom, or we've pulled spinners up above them in suspended waters on boards, but very rarely have we taken that style technique and cast it to suspended fish. And I'll tell you what, it is absolutely deadly. And number three, people like me, right? I'm a guide. I just don't enjoy live bait rigging. I don't enjoy the, 0.8 miles an hour, 4 rods out, bouncers dragging it, catching fish. We catch thousands of fish on my home waters doing that guiding, right? My customers are watching this going, Nate, you didn't like that day? We caught 180 walleye. It's just not my favorite technique. But now I can spot lock, I can anchor up the boat, we can cast baits, the same bait. We're now producing those same numbers, but in a non-trolling-esque, precision pulled type technique. We're now casting these baits, catching those same fish, and it is unbelievable. So the enjoyment level up. So now we added shallow water, we added suspended, and we added rod in hand, a little bit more movement, and all those things together, we're catching more fish, and we're catching a lot bigger fish. And you literally, with that technique design, have opened the doors to so many things. And a lot of anglers are watching this. By the time they watch it, they're going to be excited, they're going to get it, and it'll be like cutting edge to them because they don't know about releases and things like that. So by the time the true bait bite hits of this coming season, it's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's pretty much in all stores now, so people can go out and get a hold of them. But again, the project started before we had forward-facing sonar, so it's it's pretty cool because it accomplished what I wanted to accomplish before we had the tool of FFS, and now. You use it in combination with that, or, where I'm from down here, we've got a lot of small inland lakes that have a lot of vegetation in them. And that's really where this concept for me really came to light, because we don't have 3 mile long weed stretches. Yep. We'll have a 50-yard stretch that you don't want to sit and troll back and forth. You can pick it apart casting, or like Winnebago. Most of the weeds are in less than 4 foot of water. You aren't trolling through those. Trolling spinners is super effective in those shallow weeds, but it is a pain in the rear.
Yep.
Where, with this now, you don't have to think about trolling. You can work your way through, fan cast around, and that bladed Rawler pulls them in from a long ways to weed fishing. Yeah,
awesome, man.
Cool, yeah.
We appreciate you bringing it up to the world. Tommy, we are out of time right now, right? Everybody's listening to this. This information goes on and on and on. If our viewers right now want more information about you, the education, where's the best place to get more Tommy Kemos?
Well, for sure, you can follow my socials, but the biggest, the Next Bite TV, I'm fortunate enough to be a host of it. We have some phenomenal shows in the can, and all the cutting edge new product is featured every year. I just last week, the Berkeley Rawler that we're talking about the show aired, which tells you all the ins and outs of that bait. So, we're on the Outdoor channel right now. but all of the previous episodes you can see on YouTube. So
that's it. Next Bite TV, Tommy Kemos, search them all. I tell you what, the education is endless there. That's for sure. So Tommy, I appreciate the heck out of you coming on today. It means a lot to me, man. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. Again, guys, that was Tommy Kemos. I'm your host of the Source Podcast. My name is Nate Zelinsky. Again, the entire Source Podcast brought to you by Jiffy Ice Fishing. Stay tuned to them. Make sure you check out all of that for the leader in the ice fishing industry. And again, stay tuned for the next show.